Today, we're diving into a deeply personal and touching story that has resonated with many. We'll explore the journey of someone grappling with loss and the added difficulty of navigating unsupportive family dynamics during their time of mourning. So, I woke up to my fiancée being dead on Wednesday, April 1st, 2020. She died unexpectedly, and I don't want to go into the details of her death with strangers yet, but it has been the largest, most traumatic event of my life. On the first day, I called her parents, 50s MF, who came and picked me up to stay with them for a week because my parents lived across the country and I just couldn't handle being alone in our apartment anymore. Me and her family, which are very kind and accepting people, grieved together and comforted each other. They were extremely sweet and kind people, and I was very lucky to get to stay with them when it first happened. However, my parents were also informed of my fiancé's death and made the long, multiple-day drive across the country to come. They packed up my apartment for me because I just couldn't go back there, which was very kind of them, and picked me up the night after her funeral to take me to my childhood home. The first thing my mom did was complain about her own problems and how disrespectful/inconsiderate I was to not thank her right away or something. I don't really remember exactly what it was about, but I didn't have the energy to argue or put up with her, so I just mumbled some answers and tried to remain quiet. Then, later in the night, as we were trying to go to sleep, my mom decided to start asking why my fiancé didn't care for her that much, and I explained it was because she is homophobic. My mom then went into a huge screaming tirade about how she didn't want her daughter to be a lesbian. I remember her actual quote being, "Well, I'm sorry that I don't want my daughter to become a lesbian," and how us holding hands when she visited us last year was extremely disrespectful. When she visited us last year, she made my fiancé break down and cry so hard I had to drive my fiancé somewhere to be without my mom for an extended period of time. I just cried quietly to myself until she stopped screaming and we went to sleep. Around the first few days after my fiancé's death, I would wake up crying and in a panic. Her parents would just hug me and we would cry and talk until I was able to calm down. But my mom that morning reacted by screaming at me. She was saying things like, "Stop crying," and "I hate fiancé now," and "If she was alive, I'd kill her because you just keep crying," and just similar stuff. It made everything worse, and I just wanted to throw up for the beginning of our long drive home. She also kept taunting me by saying she was going to put me in a mental health hospital, or whatever it's called. On the drive home, she kept bringing up negative topics any chance she got. During all these, she called my fiancé a slut and a whore. She said that my fiancé looked like someone who would sleep around, and just tried to disgrace her character. She then tried to convince me that my fiancé was toxic and controlling. She wasn't, and that she must have been abusive because she was driving a wedge between me and my family. It hurt me to even think that fiancé was abusive when she did nothing but care about me and was tender and loving to me. When I was talking about how smart and beautiful my fiancé was, she kept saying I was smarter and prettier than my fiancé, which just made me feel incredibly crappy. Sometimes, she would then have these strange mood swings where she would say, "If I could, I would kill myself so fiancé could be alive. That's what you really want, don't you?" And when she would ask that, she would demand an answer, and I just didn't know how to answer, and I would end up crying harder. She also kept trying to say she knows what I'm going through, and I have to toughen up. But she married the first person she ever dated, so she never even went through a breakup before. She would also continuously joke about how she was going to buy me a blow-up doll and dress her in my fiancé's clothes, and it just made me feel so sick and uncomfortable and terrible when she would make that joke. She still makes that joke and now has my dad in on it. When we got home, I thought I was going to stay with my grandparents, 70s MSLF, but my mom informed me that I would have to stay with her or my sister, 20F, because I might have the coronavirus, and she wouldn't want me to give it to my grandparents, who currently have my emotional support cat at their house because my parents and sister both have dogs. My childhood best friend, 20F, also came over to stay with me for a couple weeks, which is a blessing. But she only feels comfortable staying with my parents because my sister doesn't take good care of her house. So, I'm currently at my parents' house. Anyway, the day I got home, I went to my sister's house for a little bit to get away from my parents, but my dad just ended up calling me on my phone and screaming at me that I only have a week, starting from Friday, to cry and get over it. Then I would have to work and not be seen moping around or upset about it again. He also continued to call my fiancée a selfish bitch and told me that I needed to forget about her and get on with my life. This made me just break down. I called my mother-in-law, for lack of better term, and just cried to her about everything, and I think she really doesn't like my parents now. But she told me that they are just trying to make me feel better by treating this like a breakup. My fiancé's family is extremely religious, but accepting, and so they believe that people need to be with their blood families to heal. So I think they're just having a difficult time understanding how my parents could be so mean, but they're starting to understand every time I talk to them about it. However, they're on the other side of the country, and there is nothing they can do about it now anyway, other than listen when I call them. My parents don't want me to call them because they say that her family needs to grieve, and I'm bothering them, so now I'm really worried. I'm just bothering her parents. I also made it clear to my parents that I'm changing my last name to hers because that was our plan when we got married, and it was important to me still. And at first, when I told them on the phone a few days after she passed, they seemed okay with it. But now that I'm here, they're throwing a huge dramatic show about it. They keep screaming about it and telling me that I can't change my name to a slut's name, and that nobody would love me if I changed my name to hers. And I'm just so worried that maybe they're right, but I feel like it's necessary. My parents' dog also has been growling at me every day because I'm new to him. They got him while I was gone and living with my fiancée. And my dad today yelled at me to stop moping around. So the dog will stop growling at me because he thinks the dog growls at me due to my coldness or something. I don't know. I ended up breaking down in the shower because it's the only place I can be alone anymore. My room doesn't have a door, and I desperately miss my fiancé and the life we made together. I'm ashamed that I'm 22 and I'm living with my parents right now. And I'm just depressed and anxious and scared. None of my coping mechanisms I have learned from my depression and anxiety therapist have worked, and I don't know what to do anymore. What can I do to make my parents more empathetic and caring? I've always been somebody who just needs to be held and told sweet things to when bad stuff happens to make me feel okay again, but they're just making everything worse. When I talk to them, they just shrug it off. One time, I asked my mom if she could be nicer to me, and she said, "I am being nicer than usual." I don't know what to do anymore. I just need to know what to tell them so they stop all this and become kind and sweet and consoling. I just need it, and her family knew I needed it, but they, for some reason, don't understand. I've been hugged and cuddled more by my once-to-be in-laws than by my own parents after all this happened. Please tell me what to do to get them to understand and treat me better. Or just tell me what I should do. I don't know anymore. I'm struggling. Thank you for reading. Sorry for the long post. Please leave your suggestions of what I should do below. I can't keep the tears in much longer. Thank you so much for joining us as we explored this heart-rending story. If you have any words of support or advice, please feel free to share them in the comments below. And remember to be kind to one another, as you never know what someone else is going through.